Hello and welcome to my second video, and after starting at the middle I'm going to get back to the start. So in this video let's imagine, for sake of argument, that you've suddenly been just given the name of a gene that you're required to clone and not much else. And without any prerequisites, let's just jump right on it. So okay, yes, I'm going to use a worked example from my own past, that one of the genes I work on is called OGT. So let's start off on the NCBI website and just tap in OGT, but change this fellow to only search for the gene in question and hit search. Give my incredibly high-speed internet a chance, and then yes, sure enough, the number one hit, human OGT, O-linked N-acetylglucosamine transferase. And you hit that chappy here, and you get yet another page, blah, 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 but what we're interested in is transcripts and proteins. So we hit that, and in our case we choose the biggest, because there's two different isoforms, one of which is, well, not correct in my opinion, one which is. So let's choose the bigger and more desirable fellow, and hit the NM entry here. Yes, okay. So here we now have the mRNA sequence, which is a huge step in the right direction, but we're not quite there yet. Because if we scroll down, or if I actually hit the right button, there is an awful lot of blah blah and history and so forth, but what we're looking for is the entry that's annotated CDS for coding sequence. Because after all, an mRNA has a lot of preceding blah blah and also blah blah after the fact. And for our cloning purposes, we're not interested in either of those. We just want the coding sequence. And there you have the particular numbers 197 to 3337. But extra little bit of laziness is if you actually just click on the CDS fellow, which is a hyperlink, boop, you suddenly find yourself with highlighted in brown the whole coding sequence. And as you can see, my mouse pointer is still set on Woodstock mode, and the first three letters are ATG, everybody's friend, the start codon, which is super. And similarly, if we pan on down to the tail end of this not inconsiderable gene, TAA is what greets us at the end, the classic stop codon. So all we need to do is, well, I say all, it's a simple enough task, is start selecting all of the brown fellow and nothing more, and then I right click to copy, and typical. Where is copy? Okay, that's just weird. So in that case, I'm going to highlight, it's, as you can see, this was all filmed before a studio audience, so select, and I will just Control C. I was trying to make it as visual as possible, but there you go. Now, I will go over to using CLC Workbench. You do not have to copy me on this one. This just happens to be the program I use when I fancy doing DNA manipulations. So I hit New, I hit Sequence, and in this case, yes, it's OGT, I will call it, and then I just copy in the sequence that I just shanghaied from NCBI, and hit OK. The software takes a second, and it immediately checks for the most popular restriction sites. Here is where things get real, is that after all, many cloners, they have restriction enzymes that they are fond of. I am no exception to that rule. I love BAMH1 and I love NOT1, front and back, plain and simple. If I can get away with it, I will do it. So, because NOT1 for some reason isn't in the defaults, I'm going to go through and check that on, because you can see you've got BAM, EchoR5, SAL, SMA, you know, all the classics, all the ones you'd expect to find. But I'm going to open Manage Enzymes, which, yeah, I still haven't worked out to change the default on that one. Hit NOT1, and add that to the list. Finish, even though I know the answer. It says, yep, there ain't no BAM sites in this party. There are no NOT1 sites in this party. This is very good. So, at this stage, that is what I'm wanting to know. So, now, it's a question of picking the primers. And I know that some of the audience will already be groaning in advance when I say I follow the rule where GC counts as 4 temperature points and AT equals 2. Yes, it is a little bit of a back-of-the-envelope calculation, but it has served me well. And I don't know, there are those who would say, oh, you have to analyze the hairpins, you have to look out for the GC content. No, I make a point of reaching a temperature threshold depending on the template I use. This is important. So in this universe, I'm imagining that we have access to a plasmid from somewhere or someone with already OGT in it, in which case I will aim for a temperature of melting of the primer, forward and back, of mid-60s. So 66 is ideal. Any more is okay, but you always want to finish on a G or a C. That's the point. So the reason that I would go over that value is if I found myself with TTTAAA, and then I would crawl through the desert to the next C or G, and then call it a day. Okay, now I'll also turn on translation because it might make this a little less unintelligible. So over here under nucleotide information, translation, and then show, and yes, it is frame number 1, kapow. So here we have, it shows the translation of the amino acids that will come out of this DNA sequence. So panning over here to the very, very start of OGT, I will begin selecting an area of primer. So I always tend to go in multiples of 3, or, well, let me walk and talk. So, for example, ATG equals 8, because that's 2, 2, 4. So that's already 8, but that's not a heck of a great. So now we're up to 12, because we added 4 more. Then, okay, CNG, we're at 20, great. TCTT, that's 30. Then 42, then 50, then 60. Getting close, 66. Well, that'll do just fine, thank you so much. So I will right-click on this and copy. This is my forward sequence, and going old school, just notepad, put forward, and then boop. There is the forward primer for our fantasy DNA cloning. And now it's time for the reverse, which does require you to have your head a little bit more firmly attached. So in this case, we track backwards from the stop codon. Same rule applies. So we have 8, we have 12, we have 22, we have 30, we have 40, we have 52, we have 60, and, well, okay, 68. Also very workable. But because this primer is heading backwards, it does require another step before it's ready to be used. So I'll still copy this, but I personally, even though I'm pretty sure CLC has its own reverser, I use APE, which is free software and is worth every penny and more besides. And I just drop in the sequence, and then I right-click and ask it to cut the reverse complement. Kapow! And now, keeping in mind to be on the lookout for the stop codon at the end, we go over to Notepad. Here we have reverse, and when we paste it in, you'll see the TTA, so reverse TAA, is in the correct place. The primers are not quite ready for their time in the sun because we still need to add the restriction sites. And yes, the following thing is not normal to have all the restriction sites memorized. Trust me, this comes through bitter experience, which is okay, is optional, don't worry. And I still check my work. So, also, every restriction enzyme has a funny little quirk that it requires at least 2 or 3 bases, in fact 3 is considered the baseline, next to it for DNA cutting to take place. So normally a restriction site in the middle of a whole molecule, that's easy. Just, hit that fellow in the middle, no question. But at the end of a PCR product, which is what we're going to make, then we don't want the restriction site being the last thing. It has to be restriction site plus 3. So I go AAA is just the way I roll, and then GGATCC, that's your BAM-H1 restriction site. So that will mean that your PCR product, when the polymerase comes screaming back the other way after the first round of PCR, this is added on to the end of the product, just as the first round has that tail flapping in the breeze. And similarly for our reverse primer, since I'm a huge fan of NOT1, once again, AAA to start with, then in this case, GC, GG, CC, GC, boop. And yeah, I know the space doesn't actually go into the primer, it's just for my own visibility. Point is, now there you have your forward primer with the temperature melting of 68 or 66. Point is, for a good solid PCR reaction from a plasmid, this will be a slam dunk. That's the distinction. And reverse, same rules apply. All things being equal, if nothing else dreadful happens, this will generate you a very, very nice PCR product, which you can then go on to gel extract and digest, ligate and clone. But that's a story for another time. This rather high velocity tour of just basic primer design, that's for a plasmid, but now we can go back and rework it, because after all, like the course of true love, science doesn't run smooth either. Let's imagine instead we don't got no plasmids. We have at best a stash of cDNA from someone, or a supply of RNA which we can do an RT on. So now let's see where we left off and instead make the primers slightly more substantial. So panning over to our forward primer, all the way back to the start of the template. So yes, you'll see me repeat the counting exercise, but for less trustworthy templates like RNA, cDNA libraries, anything that you're not 100% sure about, you really want to stack the deck, 78 is your operational floor, following my trusty rules. So we got 12, we got 20, we got 30, 42, 50, 60, 70, 76, hey, 80 is A-OK as well. So, you know, you would think the difference is small, but you'd be amazed how it can pay off. So, I shall paste this into the notepad for comparison, and V. And I'll just hit some spaces over so you can see. Yeah, I mean, heck, a simple 4 bases, but that increase in temperature melting means that that primer will tolerate, well, first, it'll be more likely to stick to the desired location, but if things go sideways and you have undesirable, uninvited PCR products, you can actually crank the annealing temperature up, which is something I rarely resort to doing, but that will clear up your problem, potentially. Or at least it gives you a fighting chance. If you didn't add this extra, you cannot have that option. So let's do the reverse nice and quick for the same thing, and then we can call it a day on this particular adventure. So, once again from the stop codon, we got 8, we got 12, we got 22, we got 30, 40, yeah, I need a better mouse, 52, 60, 70, 78. Okay, so once again, just copy, wash over to the APE, not forgetting that for 1 second, or at least not forgetting it this time. So, and a cut. Come on. There we go. Cut, reverse, complement. And now, over to our friend the notepad. And once again, yes, the devil is in the details. Those, I mean, there's nothing to stop you using the bigger primers on a plasmid. It'll still work. And yeah, it's not like you're going to go broke for a slightly more expensive primer. But these are the options that I follow. I don't do something unless I have to, or unless there's a good reason, or it's a safety net. So, yeah, naturally, I'm sure you will, well, I hope you'll have questions, and trust me, giving answers is what I'm all about. So, any questions, feel free to comment, and also don't forget to like and subscribe. There will be more videos coming your way, and thanks for watching.